the more that
quieting.
we train. It's like I say to my daughter, we have to train our brain, right? I mean, we're trained, and I only use brain because it rhymes with train, but I don't, it's not a brain thing, it's not actually brain,
Right.
but you know what I mean? Like it works for like, for kids, whatever. So
it works for me.
Right. I mean, like, it's like, because we have to train the way that we respond.
100%.
And when we, so this work helps them to understand and connect to that imagination. It helps create that inner discipline, right? Of understanding. And when I say discipline, you all know, I know I'm speaking to the choir here when I say, you all know discipline comes from the word disciple, right? It is not like, whoosh, that is not discipline. There's no discipline, right? This is not like smacking your hands with a ruler. Discipline comes from the word disciple. It means to teach. So people got that all messed up.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So anyway, okay. So one of my the most important thing. So some of my favorite things to work with for kids is to start let me just start with this. There's so many doors. I'm like literally like chomping at the bit. Can you guys feel me? I'm like, I'm overflowing with things to say. So there's so many doors, right?
I'm so glad
to like enter into the so depending upon what child I'm talking to and how old they are and how much time I have and what the situation is and what they're going through and what's happening, all of those things. There's so many ways to work in this way. Some of my favorite games, and we're always playing games. I always like to call them games because everybody likes to play games.
Games are fun.
So one of my favorite games to play is a grounding game. And so that I call Tails. And it really involves that creating the energetic and imaginary at the same time creation of feeling grounded in your body and coming into your body. And it's the first thing. It's a great game. Being grounded
We're familiar.
Also, yes. Being grounded and feeling grounded can also work with just holding your kids' hands with your kids' feet with your hands. That is super grounding. Touching the bottoms of their feet. And then using any metaphor that you want to start helping them to bring the energy down their body, right? But I don't normally use the feet as much because really what we're doing is grounding down into our root. So if we want to start getting into energetic anatomy, into our first chakra. So that area of being held is really important. So using our tails, we create tails from our roots and we grow a tail. Literally I start with being like, okay, you've seen a tail. Where if you had a tail, where would your tail be? And everybody knows where their tail would be because everybody knows that, right? And then they're good. They know, right? So we're sitting and we start growing our tails. And we don't have to have our eyes closed. We don't have to be in any special position. You can do it when you're standing up. It doesn't matter. This doesn't have to be, this isn't a rubric. Like this doesn't have to be a specific way. So, and you can do it with a 6-month-old and you can do it with a 16-year-old and you can do it with a 60-year-old and, maybe not 600 because we're not there yet, but whatever. So, so you create and you start growing your tail and you see your tail and then you see what color your tail is and what kind of tail it is. And you grow it down through the layers of the earth into the center of the earth. And you find the center of the earth and you plug it in and you figure out a way to connect to the center of the earth that your tail would naturally. So like if I have a whale tail, then it's going to like swoop in and like hold this little area of like the water in the center of the earth because I'm a whale. Or if I'm you guys get the idea.
the tail's up to the participant.
Exactly.
No
The
forced
tail-
tail creation.
Exactly. The
Type.
tail is all what they want. So I've never ever met anyone, adult or child, who when I'm like, you want to play the tail game, doesn't know immediately what kind of tail they are wearing.
So true. That's beautiful. Thank you for that example and for your contextual explanation too.
I loved it.
Yeah.
No, I loved all of it. I loved
I
all
could just
of
listen
it.
to you talk for like hours of this. What I was going to say earlier, I don't know if this plays, but why not? Nikola Tesla, when you were talking about imagination, he was this inventor. You all know who he is. And that he talked a lot about the imagination and how he would envision his inventions at an extreme level of detail in his mind before creating it. And that was when you were describing that, I just couldn't help but think of his kind of hyper focus on the imagination creation component and the physical coming later, but beautiful and super important. And I think what you're doing from an educator perspective is getting these kids to become aware of the psychological layers to themselves, and they're aware. You're cultivating their awareness through these techniques, and the image of the tail is so even when you said grab the earth's crust, like that's such a powerful kind of beat in the visualization, because you're growing it, and then then it hits impact, and you kind of it's tangible throughout the process. So it's beautiful work, and I'm so glad we got a live example. There's many more.
I want to say one more thing about that, because you reminded me of something that I haven't said, which I think is really important to go back just for a second about what we were talking about kids.
Please.
Spending less time having been disconnected from spirit. And so much of their connection to their wisdom, their knowing, just like their innate sort of ability and capacity to be, is present. And so in my work, the idea is that I want to give them tools and opportunities and experiences to make this conscious, to make what they already do without really kind of thinking, make it a conscious practice. Because it is my belief, and it is my experience, and it is my something that if we don't do that, life happens.
Yeah.
The stumbles happen, and they forget.
That creative power dilutes.
I know that because I have a mirror.
right. I've gone through the lessening power myself.
and I've met every other adult that I've met.
Yeah.
And I know what happens. We shut down. We close this door. We close that door. That's not safe anymore. That's not accepted in this group. That's not allowed over here. That's not cool. Whatever. I mean, there's like a million things.
Yeah.
And in order for us to belong, and this is more of like a kind of maybe a philosophical kind of thing, but in order for us to belong, and this is like a developmental, like an energetically developmental process, in order for us to belong, we have the message that we have to give up, have to orphan parts of ourselves, parts of our authenticity, and or our authentic expression. I couldn't decide which one I wanted to say, so I tried to say them together. And I don't want, I want to do whatever I can to share with the kids that I work with, and with as many kids as will hear me, and with as many parents that will hear me, and with as many teachers as will hear me, and with as many, I don't know, counselors and people that, coaches, everybody, that will hear me, that I don't want children to have to choose between themselves and belonging.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Beautiful.
So I think that's an important piece too, because there are so many people who, even some of my closest friends, who are like, like, aren't kids already super intuitive? Like, don't kids already like, aren't kids
Yeah.
already super connected to themselves? They already know like how to like, you know, like they intuitively just like, they're like, I want this thing, you know, they know what's for them, you know? And obviously recognizing that like so many adults are like, I don't know, I don't, you know, I've lost that kind of thing, you know? And it's like, well, yeah, but what happened? Right? What was the breakdown? And so when I looked at that from like a counselor, you know, as a counselor, as a mother, as a person who, you know, experienced life, and just as a mystic, or as a, I don't know, person who thinks and sees, I was like, I think there's something to this. I think we need to make these practices tangible and concrete and so much a part of their lived experience that they don't ever for a moment think, I wouldn't ever let go of that part of myself. That is my connection. That is my connection to source. I would never. I don't care who you are or why you want me to give this up, but I will never. It is a part of me, and it's so much a part of me that you can leave, but it ain't leaving.